In the world of One Piece, as you might all know, the celestial dragons literally treat people as human escalators. Slavery, human trafficking, and oppression are present within the story. These are famously stated in defense that One Piece is a political story, but it just isn't. And in this video, I will prove to you why. At 4:30 a.m. on April 12, 1861, Confederate troops fired at Fort Sumter in South Carolina's Charleston Harbor. Less than 34 hours later, Union forces surrendered to the Confederates. This event has been used to mark the beginning of the Civil War, which began due to extreme differences that divided the country. Differences, of course, due to the institution of slavery. The southern states wanted slaves, the northern states did not. Before the Civil War began, early abolitionists and religious groups framed slavery as a moral evil, appealing to consensus, ethics, and human rights. As the nation expanded westward, debates over whether or not new territories would allow slavery heightened sectional tensions. The conflict became political, involving legislation like the Missouri Compromise and, of course, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and ultimately influencing the elections. So, an original moral problem was twisted and eventually became political. This can be applied to almost every other issue found within the One Piece story. Everyone can agree that slavery is bad and evil. Human trafficking is bad and evil. Oppression due to one's social standing or race, but in the case of One Piece, species, is bad and evil. These practices are morally unjust and wrong, and One Piece paints these issues in this way. The characters that practice these awful traits are portrayed as ugly, fat, and dumb-looking villains. The designs for celestial dragons are used to portray the ugliness of their thoughts and feelings, and Oda does this plenty within the story. Characters we're supposed to dislike are portrayed this way, but that's a topic for another day. The claim I will be making in this video is simple. One Piece is not political. Despite what others think, this beautifully crafted piece of fiction is not here to make a political standpoint or to produce change within government institutions across the world. It is a story about morality and freedom, not government bad, piracy good. To start this discussion, we have to begin with the recent protests in Nepal. Nepal was experiencing significant political unrest. The catalyst of this protest was the government's attempt to ban social media, which ignited long-standing frustrations among the youth regarding corruption, economic inequality, and perceived lack of opportunities for those not connected to political elites. These protests, led predominantly by Generation Z, were accompanied with the straw hat flag, which resonated with Nepali protesters as a symbol of defiance against their own government's perceived authoritarianism and corruption. The Straw Hat Jolly Roger was present in many photos of this protest, and not just one. The protesters claimed that the flag represented resistance against oppressive regimes, and that it resonated with Nepali protesters as a symbol of defiance against their own government's perceived authoritarianism and corruption. The claim of the protesters that the Straw Hat Jolly Roger represented a resistance against oppressive regimes is a bit of a stretch. The Straw Hat Jolly Roger actually represents a pirate crew, a group of plunderers that steal and act according to their own wants, needs, and interests. At no point in the story did the Straw Hats fight purposely against a corrupt government as part of a deliberate political protest or organized resistance. Of course, the Straw Hats are all good. We know this. We're following their story. However, they are pirates, and they do cheat and lie and steal. Famously, in Skypiea, they stole all the gold. Let's not forget that. Now, you might mention that one time Luffy did declare war on the world government, but there is a reason for that. It was to save Robin. It was not as a stand against corruption or tyranny. The Straw Hats only fight against the world government and his lobby because it directly affects them personally. Later on in the story, Luffy punches the Celestial Dragon simply because the Celestial Dragon was being an absolute punk. Of course he would. But this action is reactive, not a political statement. There's even a point in Fishman Island where Luffy says, "A hero would share his meat with everyone, but I want all the meat to myself." He famously contrasts the two lifestyles, stating he doesn't want to be a hero because he's a pirate, and pirates get to feast on the meat themselves. Every move made by the Straw Hats, and especially Luffy, is not politically motivated. It's purely reactionary. To claim that Oda is making a political statement is just not true. Another point I would like to make is a simple one. The government powers within the One Piece world are greatly exaggerated. There is no government now within the real world that could even compare to the atrocities that the Celestial Dragons and the government commit as a whole on a daily basis. They are the embodiment of pure evil. I've seen this claim used also in Star Wars. That Star Wars is a political piece against the world government. That Star Wars respects and asks for resistance against the government. Although this is true, they do resist the government in Star Wars. Let's be real about what kind of empire they're resisting against. The Empire is a fictional, fantastical depiction of a horrible, corrupt government. They literally blow up planets, killing thousands. The government in One Piece does the exact same thing. The kingdom of Lulusia was decimated for the crime of harboring a revolutionary or someone they just didn't like. One Piece is fiction. Fiction is an exaggeration of reality. Evil people like the Celestial Dragons probably do exist in the real world, but I highly doubt they are the majority of the governments around the world. My final claim is a simple one too. One Piece has universal themes. They are not partisan. One Piece is a story about friendship, adventure, hope, dreams, and an encouragement to be goal-oriented people. These are broad human themes, not specific commentary on governments, policies, or political movements. I would actually go to claim that One Piece has a lot more Christian values than people might originally think. The character of Kuma and the character of Bonnie and the sun god himself really sell this home for me. But if you would like a video on that is also a video for another day. One Piece is my favorite work of fiction ever written. I love this series so much. I have studied the story elements and writing techniques in the series forever, and I constantly use Oda's techniques, or try to at least, in my own work. This series is an inspiration to me, and it has been for a very long time. To be told that I don't understand the story or its themes, or that I am not a true One Piece fan if I don't agree that it's political, is saddening, to say the least. Now, I fully expect some pushback to this video in the comments. This video is kind of just a rant about how I feel about the claim that One Piece is political. And honestly, I want that. I want engagement because I genuinely want a solid claim to back up the statement. Everything I've seen on Instagram and YouTube so far have been pretty weak arguments. People really just make really good edits, by the way, claiming that One Piece is political just by pointing out examples like slavery and say, oh, see, it's political, it has slavery. But here's the thing. This actually ties back to the small history lesson I gave about the Civil War. Slavery itself is not inherently political. It is a moral issue. Something everyone could recognize as wrong. It wasn't until the Civil War that it was forged into this political battle, with sides taking its stance on its enforcement. And from my experience, when a single person on any side of any political spectrum thinks slavery is good, it's morally evil, everyone can agree. That's a crucial distinction that so many of these political One Piece claims completely overlook. In the end, to wrap this all up, One Piece is not political. It's a story about morality, freedom, friendship, adventure, and following your dreams. Not a commentary on governments, not a commentary on the policies they make, or political movements. The characters who do terrible things like the Celestial Dragons are exaggerated villains meant to show the ugliness of greed and oppression, not to make a political statement. The Straw Hats themselves are reactionary adventurers, not ideologically driven rebels. If you got something out of this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss future deep dives into One Piece and other stories I love analyzing. And I really want to hear from you. Please drop a comment below if you agree, disagree, or just want to challenge me at all. Let's get that discussion going because honestly, I love a good debate as much as I love this series. Remember, One Piece isn't political. It's about what it means to be human, to fight for freedom, and to pursue your own dreams. And that's exactly why we all love it. Thanks for watching.